My name is Rubie Marie and I am a survivor and thriver of honour-based abuse and forced marriage. My story began when I was 15 years old, when my sister fell in love with a boy that she wanted to be with and get married to. And she disclosed that to my father. My father wasn't happy with it and he hurt her really, really badly. Soon after that, she left home. And at the same time, I had a secret boyfriend too. And my family were thinking that I was going to run away also. In the community that I was brought up with, it was very difficult to keep anything like what happened to my sister running away to ourselves. It was like a ripple effect. Everybody knew what was happening. And they all acted out like FBI agents. They were telling each other what's happening. And it really, really hurt our family as, you know, as we were so close-knit and we were being shunned out of the community. We were throwing abuse at us. And it was very, very hard to even go out to the shops where people would frown upon us and look down upon us. So what happened shortly after that was that my father was getting really annoyed with this because he was very much so a public figure in the community and the stress wasn't nice and there was a lot of heaviness in the house with the siblings and my mother and my father. So he decided amongst with my extended male figures that there would be a decision made for our family to move away for a while. So they decided for us to go to Bangladesh, stay there for a while. And so then the tension and the stress will calm down. So it was like out of sight, out of mind. So for me, this was exciting news because I've never been abroad and I was so excited to go. I wanted to always go on a plane and go to a different country. It was exciting. So I went along with it, not knowing what was going to happen. And this decision was made just before the 6 weeks holiday, the summer holiday, that everybody gets to go away and do things. And I thought this was going to be an exciting time. We went to Bangladesh and it was absolutely beautiful. Everything that my parents have told me since I was a little child came true. The way that the villagers used to live, the way that the extended family were. And it was really nice to put faces to names. And I met my great-great-grandma too, which was absolutely beautiful. So the 6 weeks came and gone. And it was September time. We were getting so homesick. We couldn't deal with the heat anymore. We couldn't deal with the food. Our bodies were just not adjusting well. So we all wanted to go back home. But my father's words were, we've spent a lot of money coming here, so we're going to stay here longer. It made sense because there was a big family that went to Bangladesh together. So as we stayed, September, October, November flew by. And we were all getting even more furious of not being able to come back home. So the words and the whispers that I started to hear were that there was a reason why we are here. I didn't quite understand what that was until the day my father actually came back from the village and sat down on the table while we were all having dinner. And he said, wouldn't it be great if we got Rubie married? That shock really, really hit me hard. I couldn't comprehend his words. I was just, the energy just in me was just bursting out. And I ran to my room and I got really angry and I was started to break everything, throw everything around. I was only 15. I didn't understand myself. I didn't understand anything that was happening. Only the fact that it was fear. The fear of getting married. The fear of another man being near me and he's my husband. These things were all just going through my mind and it was like a nightmare. It wasn't long after that there was an engagement But before the engagement, there was a few things that the men had to settle. It was around November time, and I remember there was a meeting happening in front of the house. I was just casually going into the kitchen, and I saw my mother in the living room, and she called me over, but she whispered and called me over. So I went, and there was a beautiful stained glass in front of our house, which looks out into this meeting room. And she said, oh, and pointed her finger and said, oh, that's the man that you're going to get married to. I had an uncle that lived with us, and he was a chaperone, because the way that we experienced Bangladesh, and this is my own experiences, is that women weren't allowed to go out anywhere without a male chaperone. So this uncle that lived with us 24/7, he would go and get whatever we wanted from the shops. So he would be a bit of a servant as well, just getting anything that we want and desired from the shops. And me and him got very close. He was the only other male that I could really trust. And I asked him, and I said, what happens to people if they say no to marriages? And he told me some things, that they would take you into the village, they would tie you up, they would not feed you, you wouldn't know where you are in the world, in remote places. And it was pretty scary. And I knew I didn't want that. That was something that I did not want for me. So I knew I had to go through this. The engagement happened, and I remember sitting in my bedroom with gold on me, a beautiful sari on me, and I remember everybody just running around the house, and I could hear their happy voices and celebrations of the beautiful aroma of the food in the air. And I just felt so alone. I felt like I was the only one in that house. I felt like I couldn't speak up. I couldn't talk to anybody. And I knew I was about to enter this nightmare. But his sister soon came into the room and sat next to me. She's looking at her new sister-in-law. So for her, it was very, very exciting. But I remember her saying to me that she might not be able to speak fluent Bengali, but at least she can walk, talk, and she's educated, and she's British. And the British word was emphasised, and it seemed like that's all they wanted. So she actually put the engagement ring on me, and I remember the ring being exchanged to him also in a different room. And that was it. That was the engagement. I remember taking that ring off and I threw it. I didn't want it. I didn't want to get married. It was something that I did not want. I was totally against it. A few weeks after that, that's when the wedding happened. Within this time, I was getting more and more depressed. I couldn't handle myself. I couldn't handle the pressure. I turned into a vessel, an empty vessel. I didn't have a personality anymore. I didn't know who I was. All I knew was that I was being dictated by everybody else, telling me what to do. And I knew that 100% in my heart, I didn't want anything to do with this. But it was something, like I said, had to go through. All throughout the wedding day, I was crying. My eyes were all bruised. It was horrid. I had to go through this, and I knew that, oh my gosh, I'm married now. Like, what am I going to do? But in my brain, there was like something still flickering and saying, just get home, just get home. That's your aim, just get home. Nothing happened on the wedding night because I was on my menstrual cycle. But a couple of days after, it did. That's when the rape would happen constantly. It was every day. And I knew I had to sever my body from my mind, from my soul to my spirit of who Rubie was once upon a time. That carefree Rubie. And I knew I had to just dismantle my entire being for him to have his way with me. And that was the only way that I could survive. And it was the only way that I could get through it, is that if I dismantled myself. And it wasn't pleasant at all. I remember going into the shower room and just getting under the shower and crying my eyes out time after time after time. And there was no way to speak to anybody that would understand me because I had to put a happy face on. I had to play the role to get out of that place. But before the wedding actually happened, my uncle that I was close to actually put me on the pill, on the contraception pill. And I remember taking it from day one. And these pills, I kept it very, very secret in a safe place in his house. But I went away to my mum's house and I came back to the husband's house. And I sat down in the kitchen while they were making tea for me, and I could feel the tension. It was rising higher and higher and higher. And I didn't know what it was about until his sister threw the pills on the table and said, "This is why she's not getting pregnant." It wasn't long after that I actually did get pregnant. And that was another traumatic time for me. I couldn't bear looking at my body. I couldn't bear thinking that there was a baby inside of me. I just blocked it off and I thought, okay, just get myself home to the UK. I'll get an abortion. And it felt like the shame was just haunting me. It was just following me around like a cloud. And I hated my body. I felt ashamed of myself to even let this happen. But I had no choice. I couldn't control what was happening to me. I couldn't do anything. I was helpless. Everyone was happy and everyone was celebrating again that there's going to be a newborn coming into the family and it would make the family unit stronger. I unexpectedly fell very, very sick. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I couldn't drink anything for 2 weeks. Around this time, it was April of 1999. And we were away for almost a year. And I got sick and this sickness got me good. I had no control over my body. I was going in and out of consciousness. I was totally unaware of what time of day it was. At this point, my father wasn't in Bangladesh. He actually came home a couple of weeks before because, as you can imagine, being away for almost a year, the house bills were piling up and he had to get everything ready for us to come back. But they planned for me to stay for a couple of more months there. But it didn't go that way because this illness took control of me. My mother had to go and get doctors from everywhere. There was at least 5 doctors trying to test me, trying to put the drip IV in my arm. It would just shoot back out. I couldn't get enough fluids in me, nothing. Nothing was happening. My mum was getting very, very scared because she knew this wasn't morning sickness. So she went next door and she made that phone call to my father and said she needs to come home because the doctors can't do anything. They can't give her any medicines. She's going to die here. So I was on my deathbed. And I wanted to die. I actually wanted it to happen because my body wasn't mine anymore. I had a baby inside me that I didn't want. My whole life was ruined. I was absolutely in despair. And I just went with the universe, what it was doing to me. And I thought, okay, let me just die peacefully. I don't care. As this decision was made then between my mother and my father in that phone call, my father got our tickets made to come back to the UK. It was like 7 days that he booked all the tickets for us to come back. I can't even remember who packed my stuff. That's how unaware I was of what was going on around me. All I remember was that they dressed me and they put the gold back on me and he picked me up from the bed, placed me into the van, and I was on my way to the airport. The adrenaline kicked into my body as soon as I got into that airport where I saw the security gate. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going home. It was like a dream come true, but I was in and out of consciousness and I didn't know what was happening. I was actually deluded. And I thought, is this actually happening? And as soon as the adrenaline kicked in, I thought, right, it's happening. And I only looked at that gate and as soon as I walked through, I felt such relief in my body, in my mind. It's like weight lifted off me. I got onto that plane, climbed into my seat, and I fell asleep all the way home for that 12-hour flight. And as soon as I got back to the UK at Heathrow Airport, I remember stepping out and I thought, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. I'm home. But I still felt shamed about myself. And I still felt like, what can I do now? But getting home, I sat on my bed and I didn't feel like me. Nothing felt like me. Not my bed, not my room, nothing. Everything just flashed by me and I felt like I was stuck in the past. All my friends carried on with their lives. A year is a long time to be out of your normal routine and your home. And I didn't feel like I belonged. So I tried to take an overdose and I did not succeed, but I ended up in hospital. So when I got to the hospital and I had the IV in my arm, this one beautiful angel of a nurse came to me. And she was a bit hesitant to say anything to me, but she did say the words of, you want an abortion, don't you? And I felt like for the first time in such a long time, someone's asking me what I wanted. And it was exactly what I wanted. And I said, yeah. But no one has asked me that question for such a long time. And it felt beautiful. It felt like comfort. It felt like someone cared about me. And the next day, even though I still felt that shame of having a child that was inside me and I didn't want this child, I had a scan. But as soon as I saw the scan and the little heart beating, everything changed for me. Everything changed. I thought I couldn't do this. I can't go through this. I don't want to kill this baby that's inside me. I don't care where she's come from. I don't care how she was made. She's a part of me and I kept her. And that's where my motivation carried on. The little bits of motivation, the little bits of positivity that I had left in me just carried on. And I felt the shame kind of diminished a little bit because I felt happier and I felt like I had something to put good energy into, which was my pregnancy and watching my baby grow. And it felt amazing. I had pictures in my head that I would be braiding her hair, that I'll be putting makeup on her one day and we'll have matching outfits, and all those beautiful memories came to a halt when my baby was 3 weeks premature and I had an emergency cesarean. My baby was so ill, she was so jaundiced, her baby tummy was so swollen, she just looked like a sick baby, and I didn't know how to handle that trauma. She was whisked away and into a special care unit, and I couldn't see her for weeks. I had to be appointed with a time. I had to express milk for her. No one was really allowed to go and see her. She had her own little room, but they would only see her from the outside of the room. So it was very difficult for my family as well to even bond with her. And it was even extremely hard for me to bond with her because I didn't have that time to smell her, to hold her, to breastfeed her. It was horrible. And coming home as well without the baby was even more traumatic. It felt like I lost her. And it wasn't long after that till her weight gained, she did come home finally. But I still couldn't understand what I was meant to do. I mean, I was a new mom now and I didn't understand the doctor's words, because the doctor's words that stood out to me before she came home was, we don't know what's wrong with her. And they started to actually investigate a time where I felt really, really sick. And they traced it all the way back to the actual husband, because just before I got sick on the deathbed, he was sick too. So he passed on a virus to me called CMV. So I contracted that with bodily fluids, at sexual contact. And that's the only way that you can pass it on. So it was a devastation for me to comprehend that. And I hated him. I hated him even more. I hated everybody. My whole world was just full of hate. Because I didn't know what to do next. Like, what's the extreme of her handicapness? That's what they used. That specific word. And it was tough to even absorb that word. Because I didn't know what it meant. Like, what does it mean? Explain. But they couldn't explain. So I was going off the rails in my head. I was just raging to hate everybody and anybody, and the depression was kicking in more and more and more. But around that time, my younger brother had a part-time job in an Indian restaurant. So every now and then I would call him up and say, could you bring some food home? And I remember the person that always picked up the phone had a different accent. And I sparked up a little relationship and started telling him things about myself. And I knew he lived in the Midlands, but he came down to Wales to help his friend out in a restaurant. And I thought, this is my person that's going to get me out of here. And sooner or later, I did run away. I ran away and then ended up in a 5-year domestic violent relationship with him. Because I wasn't taught the tools in life by anybody to look out for perpetrators. And I didn't know how to get out of these things. I attracted it. So that word shame carried on. It actually carried on even to a more in-depth level. And I actually couldn't bond with my child. I couldn't bond with her. I felt shamed of her, that I couldn't do anything for her because I'm an absent mother. And I didn't know how to bond with someone that I don't know what's wrong with her. And it was very, very difficult time. Very difficult. Because I was disowned by everybody. And then I was in a new city. And I felt the shame just carried on. Just destroying my soul. But soon after a few years, I actually got out of the relationship. And I started to turn my life around. Within that time, it was little by little. It was baby steps with baby steps, yes. And I still attracted negativity and toxic people. But I was 27 then. And then it came to a point where I thought, I can't do this anymore. I don't want this shame to carry on destroying my life. I don't want to keep attracting toxic people. I'm not happy. And at that time, I had 2 children by then. Also, I had a son from that domestic violent relationship. And I was a mum to 2. And I just thought, no, enough is enough. I want to change my life. And I started to change my life. The shame started melting away when I started to build confidence in myself. Starting to love myself. Starting to go back to the 8-year-old Rubie that was happy the last time of remembrance. And I looked at my children and I started to be happy for them and give them a better life. And shame ran away. Shame ran away from me as far as it could. I got myself into talking to other people about my experiences. I soon became a public speaker. I started to educate the police force, Home Office, the education sectors. I started to become a public figure, but it took me a very long time to get there. I show my face to the public. I know many survivors, thrivers still don't because of family and their own personal reasons. But I feel that when you can connect to somebody through their eyes and their presence and hear their voice and be in the same room as them, it changes everything. That invisible strength is felt. It's heard. And you can take that invisible strength away from you. But shame followed me and haunted me for a long time. But I don't feel shame anymore because it's out of my vocabulary. I don't use that word shame anymore for me or for my children or for my talking, because it's a word that's given by others. It holds no value. So if it holds no value from people that you don't value yourself, and you don't and shouldn't take their opinions on to judge your life, then why do we use that word shame? We shouldn't. And I'm very happy in myself right now. I am such a person that I'm proud of now. And my children are proud of me. And I very much so hope that one day, if you find that strength and you are going through struggles, that you do step up and talk to somebody and reach out and build your invisible strength back up as well. Maybe one day my words will affect you in that way. And I hope that is true. And I know it's true because I've seen it and witnessed it.